This is why people come home and they think, oh, relax. I'll turn on Netflix. I'll scroll through TikTok. I'll scroll through Instagram. But that stuff's actually not taking people into a parasympathetic state.
We have busy parents these days, not only doing the full-time job, household chores, even the sleep becomes a task for them.
Where I am now is like, how do I help people to understand this deeper meaning, this deeper understanding behind Qigong? Because a lot of people do. They just think it's all about being slow, it's all about energy, and that it's just easy.
I'm very interested in what you were saying about the bridge between the warrior and the healing, martial art and the healing. Like, how does the transition like that?
Qigong is for empaths and energy workers, as the gym and weights are for bodybuilders.
Hello and welcome back to Wellbeing in Me. I'm Indu, and as always, I'm joined by my wonderful co-host Meena. Meena, it's great to have you here, and as we dive into another inspiring conversation today. Now, we are especially excited because we have a very special guest joining us, Dr. Nicholas Blewett. Dr. Nicholas is not your typical Qigong instructor. He's a doctor of Chinese medicine, a master of Qigong and internal martial arts, and founder of Qi Practice, a global platform helping people unlock their vitality through the union and ancient wisdom and modern science. With over 3 decades of experience, he blends Taoist philosophy and with neuroscience, quantum biology, and mindset training to create a revolutionary approach to Qigong. His mission is to make Qigong as accessible and respected as yoga, but with more structure, more spirit, and a warrior edge. We cannot wait to explore how Qigong can help us master our energy, transform our well-being, and step into our highest potential. So without further ado, Dr. Nicholas Blewett, welcome to Wellbeing in Me. Nick, your journey into Qigong and Chinese medicine is truly fascinating. I know Meena has a great opening question to get us started. Meena, over to you.
Thank you so much, Indu. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining us on Wellbeing in Me podcast. We are really, really excited to have you here. For someone who is, not aware of what is Qigong or, what does it mean? Where do you start for anyone who is not aware of anything on Qigong?
Yeah, good question, Meena. And thank you so much, Indu and Meena, for having me on. I really, really appreciate the opportunity. Love being here. And yeah, great question, Meena. Great question. So often what I say to people who don't know what Qigong is, because quite often, I get people going, what is it? Qi Kwong, Wong, Shong, like that, even for some Westerners, even pronouncing it just, they find that really tricky. And so I like to bring it back to 2 really basic things that I think most people are aware of. And I like to say that Qigong is much like Tai Chi and yoga had a love child. And most people, when I say that, are like, oh, I get it, right? Because Qigong it's like Tai Chi, and Tai Chi is a form of Qigong. The slow moving aspects of Tai Chi are a form of Qigong, but more people know Tai Chi. And so when I say that, they're kind of like, oh, okay, I know what Tai Chi is. And then when I say yoga, they can associate, I guess, the depth of wisdom, of spirituality, of movement, that it's attached to a medical system of Ayurveda, that it is in many ways a medicine for mind, body, and spirit in its own right. So when I say that and they understand the slowness of Tai Chi, I think that marries together a real beautiful image for people to be like, oh, okay, I get what Qigong is. So yeah, that's kind of how I hit it.
That's amazing. So what does Qigong mean itself? Like if I'm a newbie without knowing anything at all, kind of I'm there. That is where I am. I know Indu has been working with you and learning from you. But for me, I'm getting introduced to this. So yeah, what does it literally mean?
Yeah, beautiful. I love this. This is a really good question because I think it gets to the core of what Qigong really is.
Yeah.
What do I say to a lot of people is, they see Qigong and they see it as slow, so they think it's easy and there's just all about energy, so there's not going to be much to it. But really, when you break down the term Qi, most people will understand as energy, and I guess like prana or something like that. But when you get into the Chinese medical classics, everything in the universe is qi, whether it be an organic being like us or whether it be inorganic like a rock. And so everything is qi. And the difference with organic beings like us is the Chinese say that the qi is animated by Shen, which would be like universal consciousness, spirit, and DNA. And it's through the infusion of like DNA, what they call Jing, and the Shen of heaven that animates the qi. And so qi is everything in our physical body. It's not actually energy. And if you were to point to the energy in the body, you'd actually be probably looking at spirit. You'd be looking at Shen, this very vital substance of consciousness. So qi, I like to say, is the physical meat suit of our body and energy. And kind of like Einstein would say that energy and matter, at least in this 3D realm, are one and the same. And you can't really separate them. And so qi is energy as well as it is our physical matrix. And then gung. And gung's the second part of the word qi gung. And now gung kind of means work, but it's a really special type of work. And gung is the type of work that refines your character, that they would say refines virtue. And so gung is like when you do work in a very dedicated way to actually refine your character, to refine your spirit. And in that refinement of spirit, we're also refining virtue, refining Shen. And so Qigong really means working with your physical matrix to refine your Shen, to refine your consciousness into a state of virtue. So in this way, Qigong is really a physical practice of working with your body to refine your character, to refine your spiritual essence into something that is more virtuous, more aligned with the language of nature, to bring about, I guess, a more holistic approach to mind, body, and spirit connection.
Oh, wow. That is amazing. I didn't realize with those two small words, this much is there. Yeah. It's mind blowing. Yeah. Thank you for that. So how did you even get into this journey? Like what brought you to Qigong?
I didn't have one of those little clandestine meetings where I meet some little Asian guy underneath a tree and get introduced to some the ancient master. You know, that didn't happen for me. But in a way, I still had my own clandestine meeting with actually a guy who'd come over from the UK, a man who'd come over from the UK named Lee. And Lee had actually come from the UK, Wales in the UK, to Australia to study with an Australian master named Earl Montague. Now, Earl actually did have that clandestine meeting with the little Chinese fella under a tree and had that very direct connection to the Yang family lineage of Tai Chi Quan or Tai Chi. And so Earl went really deep into the internal martial arts, the Qigong, and the healing elements of internal arts. And so Lee had come over to study with Earl, and I happened to run into Lee one day when I was young. I was going to get a job at SeaWorld here on the Gold Coast in Australia, and Lee and I just hit it off like mates. And in our first conversation, we were walking home that night from work, just talking, and what he explained to me was that the internal martial arts, the combat teaches you the healing, and the healing teaches you the combative arts. And they produce this beautiful yin-yang cycle of combat and healing, or of yin and yang. And that Qigong is the bridge that actually works between these two realms of martial arts and fighting arts and self-defense and the medical healing application of Tai Chi. Because at its pinnacle, Qigong actually is an energy healing art. And so I found it through Lee, and you know, I moved in with Lee as a young fella, and we just started training martial arts together as two men who lived together. And you know, I've been trying to get it out of my body ever since, but it's just captured me, and I can't. And as much as I train, it just embeds further. So yeah, I really love it.
Wow. Sometimes the universe sends us the right people at the right time. So it takes our career, I mean, our life path in a certain way, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
And I mean, the funny thing about that was, after training for many years, that's how I actually became a Chinese medical doctor, is because I was doing all the martial arts and the healing arts and learning all about that. And I actually earned my pocket money as a kid massaging my father. He was a marathon runner. And
Oh,
he found I just had a way of like feeling into the body and digging out his knots and kind of getting into that element. You know, my sister, she was into karate, and mum was mum, so mum always got massages, and I just had that knack. And so after training for a while, I ended my job at SeaWorld, and I thought to myself, I need another job. Like, what should I do? And I was just a young man on the Gold Coast, so I thought, there has to be some work for a massage therapist here on the Gold Coast. And like, I'm good at that. I like it. It's good work. And so I walked in to enroll in Chinese massage, but I walked out enrolled in acupuncture. And I never looked back. For me, it was like, it was a language that I felt that I'd always spoken. It was just so natural for me.
mm-hmm.
And so alongside studying the internal martial arts and Qigong and energy healing and stuff like that, I've also been a clinical acupuncturist for like 25 years. So 30 years in internal martial arts, 25 years in acupuncture. And that's, I guess, where I am now is like, how do I help people to understand this deeper
Yeah.
meaning, this deeper understanding behind Qigong? Because a lot of people do. They just think it's all about being slow. It's all about energy and that it's just easy. And I'm like, no, no, no. Let's go deeper. There's a lot more here.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very interested in what you were saying about, the bridge between the warrior and the healing, the martial art and the healing. Like, how does the transition like that? Like, you mean the same modality can be used for both applications? Is that what you meant by that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually. So, you might like to, because the Tai Chi slow form, and I'll talk about Tai Chi, but remember that Tai Chi is a form of Qigong.
Mm,
And so the Tai Chi form that I learnt, think of it as an encyclopedia of martial arts movements
okay.
that are slowed down so you can learn every tiny increment of the movement. Similar to like a golfer might slow down his golf movement before he
Ah,
takes his swing to like perfect every little bit of his swing. The Tai Chi slow form is like slowing down all these martial arts movements so that when you come in to do the martial arts, they're embodied, they're programmed into your physical body as well as your mind, your spirit. And so a lot of the movements are actually healing movements. So they're martial and healing. And in the Tai Chi form, you can be doing a martial arts movement, but done in a different level of intent. They actually become a healing application as well, which
mm,
makes it a really beautiful, like a very genius art. And a lot of these things are hidden because the Chinese like their secrets, right?
yeah.
Chinese whispers games. So they're very hidden. But the way you might also like to think of this, Mina,
Mhm.
is that in the martial arts, we have to learn how to cultivate a lot of energy, right? It's self defense. And in
Mm,
a conflict situation, you need to be able to express power. And so the idea of the internal martial arts is to slowly cultivate and generate large amounts of power. But at the pinnacle of that development, the martial arts in China were never about learning to fight. They were learning about becoming the type of person that no longer needs to fight. And to come through that, you have to defeat the demons inside yourself. And so, Kung Fu is a self development program so you become a really loving, kind person, really, in the essence.
mm,
Okay. And so, when you get to that really high level of the internal martial arts, you actually transform it into taking all that energy you've learned to create and think about focusing it into a laser beam of love. And
mm,
so then instead of expressing that energy through your hands and fists as fighting, you can express it through your hands and through your heart as love, as kindness, as beauty, but still have the same amount of energy, but laser focused. And when you then apply that to meridians and acupuncture points and energetic healing, you actually have an extremely powerful way of cultivating your energy to actually learn not only about healing yourself, because that's the start of the journey as you cultivate your energy, and then you transform it into larger amounts of energy. And then the end part of the journey is, again, how I mentioned, just refining that into beauty, into essence, and into being able to use that amount of energy to heal others.
That's very brilliant way of explaining how it's works internally, with the energy building and how you can laser focus on our activities, even in daily activities, I believe. So now, yeah. While I was with you in many sessions, like I've heard you say, Qigong is for energy workers and empaths, while the gym is for bodybuilders. Can you go elaborate on that, please?
Yeah,
For the
not a
listeners
problem.
to understand, yeah.
Yeah, I love you asked this, Indu. And I almost branched into that a moment ago because it beautifully tailors onto the end of this conversation. And so, like a little tagline to help people understand what we're doing, I say that Qigong is for empaths and energy workers, as the gym and weights are for bodybuilders. And so, of course, we know that bodybuilders and gym junkies, they lift weights, they go to the gym to build big physical muscles. Well, Qigong develops us in a different way and different bodily systems. And so I like to imagine, and what I like to say, just to really help people have the analogy, is that Qigong helps build your Qi muscles. And so it's just like going to the gym or just like lifting weights, but for energy workers and empaths who want to build their energy. And like what I see, I actually run like an empaths and energy workers kind of workshop challenge, because I find that, after being an acupuncture for so long and working in energy, I know lots of energy workers and empaths, and they always seem to be dredging at the bottom of their barrel. They're tired, they're worn out, they're run down, they get sore shoulders or sore hips or sore backs and problems. They pick them up off people. And so the idea in Chinese medicine and in Qigong is that we should actually cultivate enough energy to not pick them up. And it's not casting shields of energy, and it's not detoxing and trying to get rid of stuff. It's actually being strong enough and cultivated enough that you have enough energy not to even pick them up. And so that's that kind of first level of self-healing. And so I find, like with a lot of empaths and energy workers, they need to go through that process of actually cultivating their energy and developing it to stronger amounts. And I use another line a lot of the time, which is, all it takes for evil to win is for good people to do nothing. And I really think this world needs more than ever is for good people to really have a lot of energy, to be extremely powerful. So when, they actually need to get up, because I think you mentioned on a moment ago, the healing of Qigong doesn't have to be energy healing on other people. Maybe it's how you take the energy into work. Maybe it's how you show up in the street. Maybe it's the energy you have to parent your children or to show up in your relationship. Like, that energy is healing. And if we have more energy, we have more to share. And so the more energy we can build, the more we can actually show up as our true, authentic selves, be sovereign, own our energy, and actually have that energy to express and serve the greater good of planet Earth and God and the universe and all those awesome things.
Beautiful. Now that you've mentioned parents, we have busy parents these days, not only doing the full-time job, household chores, taking care of children, picking and dropping for different activities. At the end of the day, they are like, okay, even the sleep becomes a task for them. Like, okay, I have to go to sleep on time because next day I've got this to do. So they are more in that switched on mode rather than calming down themselves. So what is that they need to do for them to then actually go into the sleep pattern? Because I think sleep is one of the healing natural process that need to happen for every one of us, but that's not happening these days. You can see many people are in insomnia or going crazy with social scrolls and things like that. So what would you suggest them, or what would be your recommendations for those busy people?
Yeah, awesome. Great question. So I might backtrack from it, because of course we know that we need quality sleep for our body to regenerate. Like that just should be stock standard for most people. And we know to fall asleep, we need to be in a parasympathetic state of relaxation to be able to catch the wave into sleep. So the question really is, how do busy people regulate their nervous system to be able to do that? And like, I'd like to offer you this as a thought. So, when you're on your computer and you go to delete a file, what happens? You press delete and a little box comes up and it says, are are you sure? Are you actually sure you want to delete this file? And you have to be like, yes, I'm sure. Well, actually, taking ourselves into a parasympathetic is exactly the same. And so imagine for a moment, 250,000 years ago, and you come across a saber-toothed tiger. And the saber-toothed tiger looks at you and goes, ah, dinner time. And your nervous system goes ping straight into sympathetic, and you run. And you're running and you're running and you're running and you're running. Now, this is a really good day because you managed to get away from the tiger and like hide behind a tree so I can't see you, right? What would happen if your nervous system all of a sudden just went, oh, we'll just delete that. You don't worry, just be in a parasympathetic state.
Yeah.
Everything would stop and you'd be like, oh, okay, it's totally cool. And then the tiger would just eat you, right? It'd catch up with you, it'd get you, it'd catch you, and it'd eat you, right? But if you get away from the tiger and you end up at camp at night and you're sitting around the fire, you actively have to delete that file of stress. You can't just expect it to disappear. But most of us do, and this is why people come home and they think, oh, relax. I'll turn on Netflix, relax. I'll have a glass of wine, I'll relax. I'll scroll through TikTok, I'll scroll through Instagram. But that stuff's actually not taking people into a parasympathetic state. It's like sweeping their problems under a rug and expecting their body to naturally fall into a parasympathetic state. So just like the computer, if you've run a stress response through the day, and like most parents, they've got to get the kids up, they've got to go to work, then they've got to deal with their bosses, they've got to deal with people that they work with and the customers, and then they've got to get home and they've got to get dinner ready, and then and like all this stuff. And then if they think they can just sit down and dead scroll or have a glass of wine or watch a movie and that will regulate their nervous system, that's not what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so that's where, using the Qigong natural breath or doing some Qigong or anything that's actively, yoga, some meditation, actually taking that time to regulate their nervous system is what they need to do so they can get into a state that actually allows them to catch that wave into sleep. If they expect to do it, and then they might still fall asleep, but then they'll be dream disturbed and they'll be going over all in their head. They'll be working they're not actually going to get that deep rest. So what I would suggest to these people is to actively take out, 20 minutes of your evening routine. Use it as wind down. Put the phone in a drawer. Turn it off. Once the kids are asleep, once something has happened, don't drink the wine. Actually sit down and actively participate in nervous system regulation. Don't expect it just to wake up in the morning, it to delete and for you to get a good sleep and wake up. You actively need to participate in that for your body to undergo those changes.
Absolutely. That's such a valid thing. Actively, mindfully being present and do what you have to do to calm your nervous system. That is very important. And I believe Meena has done yoga and other modalities, probably yoga. Meena would have the follow-up question on this. So Meena, just go for it.
Yeah, there are few things that Nick said which went like, ooh. light bulb moments, yeah. So how much is breath, talking about yoga, but before we get into yoga, how much is breath incorporated in Qigong? I'm just curious to know about it.
Yeah, all the way through, it is as integrated in. Very different, same, different in many senses.
Yeah.
I think yoga has a lot of different breath techniques, whereas Qigong basically has 4.
Oh.
The difference is with the Qigong breathing techniques, it's all actually about building Qi. It's Qi development, whereas I think in yoga, they've gone a lot deeper into this one's for this, and this is for this, and this is for that. Whereas with Qigong, it's like energy cultivation. That's the main base.
Yeah, even yoga has energy cultivation. And also I'm learning something called Meipadam at the moment, which is an ancient warrior art from South India. And that was practiced by people who go to the war, and similar to, that's where my question previously I was asking about how does the martial art link to the healing. It comes from there, because this Meipadam we actually interviewed someone for Meipadam who is my teacher, and we had him on the podcast as well, and that is also about energy cultivation. Yeah, so I can see how much they same, like how you said, same, but different, but yeah, looks like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've done a little bit of research into sorry, I'm really bad at pronouncing it.
Yes.
Um,
May pardon.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's actually quite a lot of similarities in that practice as to not necessarily like what you think is classical Qigong,
Yeah.
but like the way I practice Qigong, because my background's internal martial arts and not just Qigong, I had a lot of flowing movements to actually open up the body and correct tensegrity and structure and movement. And there's actually a really interesting overlap with both of those arts. What I probably see at a glance, and I've never done in-depth research, but I think Qigong probably goes into slowing those style of movements right down. Whereas I think in that art, I'm not even going to try and pronounce it properly, is they remain fast. And like in Qigong, they should be fast and slow. And I kind of talk about like 4 different speeds in Qigong.
Yeah.
No, as in no movement, as in just standing still.
Yeah. Still. Yeah.
Slow, which is when you go slow. Flow, when they get sped up into a flow, and then go, which is when they're explosive. And so you end up with no, slow, flow, and go, and those kind of 4 different speeds. And so I think what I've noticed is that with the Qigong, we can go extremely slow. And there's a thing I call slow-mo momentum, slow motion momentum. And that's when, like, if we were doing something like faster with a bit of flow, you can feel the momentum through your body, and that shift of momentum's energy, right? Like it is literally the physics definition of energy. And so then we can change that into slow, and we should still be able to feel that flow of momentum and energy. And so it's like slow motion momentum. And so I think that's probably the biggest difference. But movement qualities in that art, chef's kiss, beautiful. I really like them. It was, it's good art.
Yeah, I have been practicing it for a while and I love it. And also what I learned from it is when in the ancient days, when the people go to war, they were practicing these moves, and what was documented as pictures became asanas, as poses for yoga. Yoga actually evolved from this because it became more of holding those poses rather than the movement itself. So so probably then, Can
I add to that? Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Oh, don't get me excited. Don't get me excited, Meena. So there's a lot of research now that asanas and yoga, like long static stretches, the fascial system actually gets stretched out like a fishnet stocking that's got ladders. Okay? Whereas we want our fascia system to be elastic. And to train the fascial system to be elastic and strong, you actually want to practice either slow movements like Qigong or flowing movements that take the body through a range of motion but are not statically stretching. And static stretches have shown to actually destabilize joints, decrease strength, and it like elongates and fragments fascia. And so I didn't know that point you just brought up, but it makes a lot of sense because there's a style of movement that all mammals on the planet do.
Yeah.
And it's called pandiculation. And so cats don't stretch, they pandiculate. Dogs don't stretch, they pandiculate. Whales, dolphin, right? Mammals, they pandiculate to create a stretch response, but it's not static. And you might get to a spot where it's extremely slow, but then you recoil back in the opposite direction. So it's never like holding like a static stretch for a long time. You may move into it, but then you'll move out of it slowly. And so that's actually been shown in the science to open up our body and create natural levels of flexibility that retain strength and elasticity, which is what a warrior needs. And so a warrior doesn't need heavy strength exercise when they're about to go into a battle because they'll be tired and fatigued and worn out, but they need to keep their body agile, loose, powerful. And so it does not surprise me perhaps that maybe the asanas came later as almost a bit of a let's stay in here as opposed to a movement art. That does not surprise me.
And no wonder I struggled in yogas.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I wanted something with the movement, like not a static one. And I think I felt like it's a personal preference, and maybe internally that's what I felt could be the reason. And having said that, Nick, we were talking about movements, pandiculation, and all of that. I have experienced the dragon curls or the spinal wave. How much is that important, or what does it want? I've experienced it, but just for the listeners, from straight from the source, I just want you to talk about how does the spinal curve or the dragon curls actually help them, and why is it important for them to embody that?
Yeah, I love this. It's a really good question. So, and I'll come at it from both a yoga, because I think a lot more people understand like the more Ayurvedic yoga side of things. And so, of course, we have Kundalini in yoga and Ayurvedic, which we know are like a masculine, feminine, yin yang spiral of energy that goes up through the spine. So Chinese medicine has an equivalent, and they call it the Ren and the Du-mai. And the Du-mai is the yang channel that goes up the back, and the Ren channel comes down the front. And so in Chinese medicine, they talk about a system called the microcosmic orbit. Okay, I can't think of what it's called in Chinese, but often it's referred to as the self-winding wheel of law. And I love that because it reminds me of Dharma, right? That karmic Dharma of the wheel is constantly rotating. And the idea of this channel is that it is constantly rotating around our body, up our back and down the front. And the microcosmic orbit as a meditation in Chinese medicine is the foundational alchemic process of the body. And all other energy basically comes from this microcosmic orbit. They are the major yin and major yang channels. And so when we're doing the dragon curls, which for people listening are a spinal wave. In the West, they call it a spinal wave in functional medicine, where they get a waving ripple up through the spine. The dragon curls are designed to allow people to actually come into the physical reality of what the body mechanics are doing. And so let me just backtrack for a moment. When I first originally started to learn a lot of this stuff, people were just sitting motionless in like a meditation sitting, and they were thinking, breathe in, energy goes up the back, and thinking, breathe out, energy goes down the front. But they were sitting stationary. Okay. And now the movement of this energy is said to be continually flowing. And so the breath is supposed to move it, but it's not energy. As I said before, Qi is physical as much as it is energetic. And so what they're actually talking about, if we want to bring it into a Western sense, is cerebrospinal fluid movement. Okay. And cerebrospinal fluid is a real fluid. And we know that to move fluids through the body, we can create systems of pumping through internal pressure gradients. Our lungs work as pressure gradients. Our heart changes pressure gradients. Our blood pressure is a pressure gradient. The lymph system is a pressure gradient. And so a lot of the time when we're doing these movements of pandiculation and we're moving, we're actually creating pressure gradients and movement through our body. We're creating changes of yin and yang through the eccentric and concentric, or the muscle fibers that are switched on and the muscle fibers that are switched off, are forming a pumping system through the body. And there's an Australian yogi, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he's a big physio, and he's like the legit yogis, he's like a legit yogi. He's not a Lululemon yogi, right? But what I love about him is he brought up, he had a thing on the 12 different body pumps. And I was like instantly, because I've been saying for 20 years, the body's a chi pump. The body's a chi pump. This is what I feel when I do my internal movement, like I'm pumping energy through the inside of my body. And so when I saw his ad, I was like, oh, buy, like literally buying that course right now, and I'm going to dive in. And so he went through 12 different physical ways of creating pumping through your body. And his whole point is that if the heart's a pump, and the literal definition of fitness is to do more work with less pumping, that's fitness, right? getting
Yeah.
more work done, more physical work with less pumping, that if you can create pumping through your body without increasing your heart rate, is that not the definition of fitness? And like we think of all these ancient things, which was the less, your heart's only got X amount of beats, and the less you can work it, but still remain fit, the healthier you are, like the healthier. And so I love this idea. And when I went through his course, I'm like, oh, we do that in Qigong. Oh, we do that in Qigong. Oh, we do that in Qigong. Oh, that's in Qigong. Oh, that's in Qigong. Oh, we do that too in Qigong. Oh, and like all of the 12 different ways of pumping are within Qigong. And I absolutely love that. And so what we do need to do in the body is create pressure gradients to move fluid through our body, whether that be lymph, blood, body fluids, whatever it might be, even nerve tissue, cerebrospinal fluid is the same. And so we actually need to have a physical, tangible reality of movement. Now, the idea of internal movement is that the movement can become so small, so refined, that it's something inside our body that moves. So you can't see it physically. However, for people to get to that point, they need to often refine large gross physical movement and refine it over a period of time until they can do that very refined movement. Just sitting there thinking about it, it's not going to have the physical activation. And so the dragon curls, long story, sorry, I got there in the end. The dragon curls are actually creating the physical action that begins to teach you how to refine those physical movements into an internal movement whereby you can actually create a dragon curl from the breath. And what I've discovered is that the breath is actually directly connected to this spinal wave. And so the breath and the wave are the same. The breath creates the wave creates the breath, and they are one in the same. And this is the most foundational physical energetic system of our body. And so when we breathe, we should naturally have this wave going through our body. But when we're full up with physical tension, mental tension, emotional tension, energetic tension, spiritual tension, our body gets so clogged up that we can't feel this natural wave. And so the dragon curls start you out very big. And that's what we did in the program, wasn't it? We start out kind of big so we can really feel it. And I'm like, keep your mind pinned and let's make this wave smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until someone sitting across the room would hardly see that moving. And still, that's still a physical thing. There's layers underneath that, but it's actually facilitating the physical mechanisms we need to generate that pumping of cerebrospinal fluid or of yin and yang, jing qi, up through our spine so it can transform up through our spine, filter out through our spinal nerves that go into all our internal organs, all our cells, all our bodily systems, and fill the brain full of the cerebrospinal fluid it needs to be neuroplastic, to adapt and to grow. And then it's said that after we've built that jing qi up through our body into our brain, that it actually starts to drip down as a physical liquid, as a part of like a saliva that they call golden nectar, which is when this fluid, this cerebrospinal fluid, is built to such a level in your brain that it physically starts to drip down from your pituitary gland in the upper part of your mouth onto your tongue, which then you swallow into your digestive system, which then filters through your digestive system and begins to heal your body from the inside, from the yin side. And so then we have this yin and yang flow of energy going through our body that isn't only energy, it is a tangible physical pumping through our body of the primary energies up through our spine into our brain and then back down through our digestive system.
So, if when you meant dragon curl, it is more to bring that wave through breath internally, is it? That's where we finally get to. But does it start with the movement and then gradually you slow down everything and get there?
Yes, I like to kind of merge them.
Yeah.
And what I say to people is they'll get to a point where they're like, is the wave causing the breath, or is the breath causing the wave? Like, I can't tell. And that's when you know you've created a synergy between them that they have become one and the same. And for this, you need to go through a softening process of the body where you can maintain perfect structure, but are soft in that perfect structure. And without going into too much detail, there's a thing called the deep core fascia, which essentially goes like the fascia is permeating through your entire body from, but the deep core fascia through dissection of the human body is shown from the tip of the tongue to the tip of the toes. And the diaphragm is like the middle piece. And so when you get the diaphragm moving correctly and the way that that connects to your spine and the way it infasciates, I just made up a word, infasciates through your body, right? It actually facilitates that waving action through that deep core fascia, which in my experience, and I think Indu would back me up here, has such a deeply relaxing and parasympathetic effect on the body. And like I have people in the window in my classes when I come back to, and they're just like, there's drool and they're just like, oh, I'm going to bed now, like I've had enough. I'm like, we got an hour left of class. And they're like, oh, blah, blah. They're done, right? Because the regulating effect this has not through their entire spine, through all the spinal nerves, which goes into all the organs, all their cells, all their bodily systems and their brain. It's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think one has to experience that to understand how it works naturally. So one day you will get to experience that, Meena.
This episode of Wellbeing in Me is proudly brought to you by Mr. Thiruvengadam or Thiru Arumugam, a respected professional and community advocate. Over 16 years of experience in MES and ERP systems, Thiru serves as a business process expert at AstraZeneca Pharmaceuticals in New South Wales, where his leadership and innovation are widely admired. Since migrating to Australia in 2003 as a skilled professional, Thiru has built a career that reflects not only technical excellence, but also a deep commitment to service, inclusivity, and community well-being. As an active member of Australian Labor Party since 2006, Thiru currently serves as a Senior Vice President of the ALP Toongabbie branch. He has been a Justice of Peace in New South Wales since 2012, from organizing Clean Up Australia projects and blood donation drives to supporting new migrants and hosting Australia's biggest morning tea, where he helped raise over $4,000 for cancer research. We thank Mr. Thiru Arumugam for his continued support and for being a true example of leadership through service, inspiring communities to grow stronger and together.
I mean, I was kind of mesmerized with the way of explaining things. I've heard most of it, but I think we went 2 layers deeper into explaining things, which is good. And I think this would help the listeners to understand how exactly it works and more in-depth understanding about how Qigong and not just the energy or the movements. It's a holistic practice that one need to embody for themselves. Yeah, I think somewhere in the start you mentioned about 3D, and I've known like you've got layers of 5D. I've heard about you've got layers of steps into the Qigong practice. So would you be explaining it to us, like what is the 1D, 2D, and what it takes for us to step from one level to the other level?
I love this. Yeah, for sure. And I think I mentioned earlier, like this idea of different levels towards healing, where we've got cultivate the self. And so we might like to think first steps, regulate ourselves. The next step is to cultivate our energy. The next step is to transform it. And then the next step is to actually have that energy to be able to heal. And so when we look at the different layers of movement, it's really about how do we begin to build this up? Because a lot of people in the West, like when you think about the movements that we do each day, what do? We lie down, we sit, we stand, and we walk. Yeah. Maybe we bend a few times to pick things, but like very limited movement. And so the body actually begins to lose that movement, like the different movement patterns that we do. Like think of kids, they're jumping, they're running, they're climbing, they're swinging, like they're doing all sorts of crazy stuff with their body. And what's been shown is that the brain actually developed through movement. And so when we begin to lose that movement, we become very, I guess, rigid or very isolated would be probably the good word, where, we go to pick something off a bench, we just move our arm. Right? When we're walking, the body may stabilize you walking, but the body's not doing much, just the legs move. Whereas when we actually get into what the Chinese would call as internal movement, everything must move to create that movement. You can't be isolated. Now, isolated movement's great in different circumstances. You couldn't go up into the International Space Station and put in a tiny screw while floating around in space if you couldn't just wiggle your fingers to work a screwdriver. But what we are missing is a lot of the whole body sporting style movements that we might do as we age, because people stop playing sport, they stop being as active. And there's a statistic like most people around the age of 25 will jump for their last time.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
By the age of 25, a lot of people will never ever jump again. That's crazy I just saw Mina go, oh, yeah, I know. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And that's why, I guess, why yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, sport is so good, and why you see a lot of the people who are, well into their 80s, 90s, and the centurions who live past are really active, because that movement's so important. So what Qigong does is it allows us to step up or layer that way of moving to get whole body movement. And so you may like to think of this like a horse running. When a horse runs, everything runs. Its neck moves, its body moves, its legs move. And if you stopped one leg moving, like if you strapped that leg mid-run, the horse would fall over because it needs its whole body. But we don't do that. We walk, our arms swing, but we can walk with our arms stationary. We're not going to fall over. But if we were, say, running and sprinting on a soccer field and stopped our arms moving, all of a sudden we'd probably fall over too, right? It'd be awkward. And so what we do in our Qigong is we build up whole body movement, where that deep core fascia that I just spoke about, that's pumping the cerebrospinal fluid, is actually generating the movement. So no longer are you moving arms and legs, so to speak, but you're moving from this deep core fascia, and that movement is rippling from the center of your being, from that deep core fascia out through your entire system. And it's a completely different way of moving. And since I've been talking a little bit about this and putting it into Western terms, a lot of the functional movement people I've been talking to are like, wow, this is the next step, because they're still just using arms and legs for exercise, whereas the Chinese teachings are move from the center. Mm. The energy comes from the center. And we're not even just talking about our lower dantian or our lower tummy. We're talking about the center, the core of our being. And the Chinese have a couple of different centers in the body. They have the lower dantian, the lower pelvis. They have the spine, which is a center. And they have what's called Jin. And the Jin may be thought of as that deep core fascia. And we're moving from that system, so that when a leg moves, the arm has to move. When an arm moves, the leg has to move. Everything moves as one integrated whole. And what they say is when you fall into a state where the entire body moves as a single whole integrated being, that we fall into a state they call Sung. And this has been translated to be, Sung is to move without feeling the movement. But I don't like that translation. Mm-hmm. It's to move but only feel movement, so that it's one movement, not a collection of integrated wholes. So you can't feel your legs separate from your hand, because they're doing the one movement. Even if they're doing slightly different things, it's one movement. So when the horse runs, the horse runs. When the horse jumps, the horse jumps. And it's only humans that when we jump, we start thinking about something else, so we mess up. Mm. And so the idea is returning the body into a single intent. There may be different things happening, but how do we return that body into a single intent while maintaining whole attention? So intent and attention are balanced and integrated into the movement, so that you are moving as a single whole integrated being. And so the different levels are moving people up to being able to actually understand that. And so a lot of Qigong we see on like YouTube or Instagram or places are quite often extremely isolated with just the arms moving. However, that's very, very basic first level. And as we go through, that's why Tai Chi as a martial art is a very high level of Qigong when it's integrated, because everything has to be moving together at that level. And so what I try to do in Qi practice with my business is, how do I take people who have now got limited range of motion, tension, unwell, mental health problems, they're stressed, they're sick, back into this holistic way of moving. And as they begin to integrate that and learn the different systems and integrate this way of whole body moving, their body naturally begins to heal, because they're becoming that human animal again. They're regulating their body. They're getting everything to move from that deep core fascia. They're integrating their intention and attention, aligning their consciousness, aligning their body, and all in line with the breath and how this is integrated through that whole body movement system.
So, do you start with some basic movements? Like I haven't experienced Qigong, but the other day someone was teaching me to hold like a basketball, and then how I have to. It shouldn't shrink or it shouldn't go wider, and then how you move it, and that really felt. When I looked at her, it felt so easy, but when I tried it, it was not easy. It was a bit hard to do that. But when you're now explaining, it is not just one movement, but you get into the entire body movement. So what are your movements that you teach, Nick? Like, what are the kind of movements you teach?
I love this. Do you want to go deep right now, Meena?
Yeah.
Should we go down the rabbit hole? Meena's like, yeah, let's.
I'm curious to know, because I have learned few things which, when you are sharing, I'm relating. Oh, I have learned this in some other modality. I have learned this like that. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So often, like I even say to my students sometimes, I don't believe in Qi. And they're all like, what? But you're like a Qigong teacher. And I say, look, I'm not saying I don't believe in it, but for a moment, let's put that to the side. Let's put energy to the side. We'll bring it back in a moment.
Yeah.
And what I want you to think about is tensegrity. And now this is a bit of a new term for most people. And a tensegrity is a way of developing structures so that they remain open, flowing, and structurally sound. And the human body is a tensegrity system. And a lot of the massage therapists and fascial scientists and people are talking about this tensegrity. And we see it from the gross structure of our muscular system right down to the cellular structure, this concept of tensegrity. And so for tensegrity, you might like to think of a spider web, right? And like a spider web's nice and open until you walk through it or break a bit off, and then it goes doing and it changes shape. Okay, and it's all closed in and it's all broken. So the human body's a tensegrity system, and we move within tensegrity, we move in tension.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now in tensegrity, because tension we might think of like physical tightness, like, oh, I'm trying to get a six-pack, I'm trying to flex my biceps. Like, we're not talking tension like that. We're talking a tensegrity pattern which holds everything in balance and harmony. And so when you're doing these movements and you're trying to keep your arms those same kind of distance, we start to move in tensegrity, just naturally. And so when I go through my program, I start out with very basic movements to start to teach people how to move in tensegrity.
Mm.
And it's really interesting because a lot of the modern fascial scientists, the functional movement people, are starting to talk about tensegrity and how we need to maintain tensegrity. And so Qigong is really about learning to move within tensegrity. And when we move in perfect tensegrity, and as I talked about whole body movement, the whole body can move as a tensegrity, like a breeze blowing through a spider web makes the whole web move. And it's moving in complete balance with itself. There's not like one part nicely fanning and one part moving fast. Like, that would be out of balance. And so when we start to move within that tensegrity, I say to my students, now we've parked Qi, what you can feel now is tensegrity, and tensegrity gives that energy feeling. And a lot of people have felt that in Qigong when they're playing with the ball of Qi. Mm-hmm. And maybe it is Qi. You can bring Qi back in and go, okay, you're playing with Qi. But to feel Qi, you need to move in tensegrity. And when you move in tensegrity, you feel qi. So they're one in the same. And so if you want to build your qi system, we need to build our tensegrity system. And as we know from science, the stronger and more connected our fascial system is, the more healthy we are, the better energy we have. And so there's a beautiful crossover here of how we actually develop our tensegrity. And because a lot of people have lost this, that we need to start out very basic, which is why there's the different levels of layering up this movement, because it's not just, I say this all the time, Qigong is not a set of movements. It's a way of moving. And so I teach that way of moving primarily. And we can put movements on top of that, but to begin with, people need to learn the way of moving, because that's actually the foundation of human biology, from the cells, from our DNA, right through to greater consciousness, and they as well, they're a tensegrity. So it's a really beautiful way of understanding it. And so that's why I like to drop the chi out sometimes, but you can bring it back in. And so to get back to it, when you're moving that ball and your arms are staying that same kind of distance, it's causing you to move in a stronger tensegrity field, which gives you the feeling of qi.
Amazing. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, that I felt, even though it was tricky to do straight away, which I thought it won't be, but I with your explaining, I could see that, yes, that's how I felt when I tried it for a while.
So now is that we've spoken a lot about movements, let's go back through to your 4 stages. You said we start with stillness, no movement. So how was that no movement? And I think there are some certain movements, like I'm not too sure whether I would be pronouncing it right, Zhan Zhuang. Can you just touch base on that? So how stillness actually helps us to go deeper into all these energy fields?
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And Zhan Zhuang is the perfect example. Now, Zhan Zhuang, when I first started running these programs, we used to call it, like a Western term, we used to call it 3-circle Qigong.
Right.
And when I started teaching these courses, I was like, I should probably find out the traditional term, right? Like, I should probably teach the traditional term. And so I did what you do when you want to find out the truth of something. I went to Facebook onto a Qigong group, and I wrote a really dumb question. And so everyone wants to correct you on Facebook, right? So I'm like, what does Qigong move? And like within 30 minutes, there were 200 answers from people about what Qigong meant. And all the answers were, Zhuan means stillness, and Zhuang means like post or foundation in the ground. And the idea of Zhan Zhuang is quite often to be still, like a post sunk in the ground, because you're grounding yourself. However, when we connect to our breath, we should actually be starting to move with our spinal waves, with our dragon curls, as I said, and our deep core. So we're not really still. And if you actually, time lapse a tree, trees aren't still either. Flowers turn their leaves and their flowers to the sun. Trees move. They're not still. And so I was like, it's not accurate. And we shouldn't just be like slumpy fat in the ground not being able to move, because that wouldn't work with martial arts. That wouldn't move with life. I don't know if I like that answer. But then I realized that underneath the term, in classical Chinese texts, the characters have about 5 to 6 different layers of meaning. And so when I sat back and I looked at the terms, I was like, okay, stillness, foundation, stillness, foundation. Stillness is the foundation. And so I realized that Zhan Zhuang isn't necessarily being still. Zhan Zhuang is a state that underpins all movement. And so everything needs to return to stillness. Everything comes from stillness. Everything returns to stillness. And this is definitely a concept in Chinese medicine of always returning to the center. And so that stillness is like returning to the center of our being, the center, the core of ourselves, whether that be physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, or spiritually. And so from a movement perspective, we want to make sure that after a movement, we come back into our center. And before we can move from our center. In martial arts, we know we need to be balanced. If we overextend ourselves or if we're too far back, our balance is lost and we don't have that center of gravity. And so in our body, that's what this Zhan Zhuang state is. It's that foundation. And you might like to think of this in regards to like a physio treatment. And in the West, like you've got a shoulder problem. So they say, oh, it must be this muscle. Fix that muscle and it pulls your shoulder forward. Now, oh, that didn't work. Let's tighten that exercise and tighten that muscle. Oh no, let's tighten this muscle. Must be that one. Must be this one. Must be that one. And it's like a Band-Aid effect. But they never return to the foundation. They never return to a baseline. And that's like you may return to the concept of the tensegrity. The tensegrity is perfectly in balance. And so being still actually balances our tensegrity and drops tension out of the body so everything can fall back into its natural state. And of course, that's the state we should return to after a movement. That's the state we should be in before we generate movement. We need to be in our center. And so this idea of Zhan Zhuang, stillness is the foundation, is that state of stillness should be the foundation of our body. But most people are living with pockets of tension within their tensegrity, rounding their shoulders, slumping their back, tight around their hip, tight in their neck, wherever that tension might be, and it pulls that tensegrity out of shape, like a spider web being stretched in different directions. And then what we need to do to get that spider web to be healthy again is get it to return back into its natural tensegrity. And so like with physios, I really believe that Qigong and this state of stillness in Zhan Zhuang has a really powerful element for allowing people to return their body back into its original shape. And I love that term. The original shape where our fascia is just naturally elastically soft in its natural posture. And then we can build upon that. But we must always stay within that balanced tensegrity. And so coming back to no, as you said, that first layer of movement, like no movement, we're still moving, but like a spider web just blowing in a breeze where everything is just balanced and everything is just harmoniously ebbing and flowing. And then if there needs to be a larger movement, it's born from that stillness, and any movement that's come after returns back into that stillness. So we are always maintaining tensegrity, always maintaining harmony and balance.
This is such a beautiful thing, I believe. So I believe listeners who are listening to this, they would be like really wanting to learn and feel that because of the sedentary life that we are leading and with the stress and whatnot, we all do have, although we feel like we see ourselves, I'm physically okay, I'm okay, I'm feeling normal, but internally there are many things not normal. So I think this would be a great awareness for them to start with. And if they want to reach you, I understand you have a global vision of making Qigong for everyone. Yeah. So how can someone reach out to you?
Oh, beautiful question. Probably the easiest way and the most accessible way to reach me is actually on Facebook. And simply looking up my name, Nicholas Blewett, is a great way to start. That's generally the easiest way, I think. I spend a lot of time on Facebook. Other than that, I am present on Instagram. But I've recently cleared out my profile. So if you're looking at it and there's only like 1, 2, or 3 little things on there, realize I've decided to start that again. And so on Facebook, look up Nicholas Blewett. You'll be able to see, because my profile will be full of Qigong. That won't be a problem at all. If you jump over to Instagram, my Instagram is actually Qi Fit. QI. Qi in Chinese is spelled QI. So QIFIT.com.au. And that's what my branding is on Instagram. That would be another amazing way, of course, to reach me. Probably the best ways to get in contact with me.
Okay. So is there a way that maybe I understand you also generous in giving a 5 days free challenge for someone to understand how Qigong is the best fit for them to, do you want to drop in any links so we can put it in the show notes so that way they can then enroll into your upcoming sessions?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, like if you've been interested in any of the topics I've talked about, I cover these in my 5-day free Qigong challenge, where I basically teach everyone to create their own powerfully transformative Qigong practice. And the easiest way to find that will, of course, probably by the link that Indu and Meena have so very lovingly provided. But you can also go to qipractice.com, QIpractice.com, and there you'll see the sign up on that front page to join me for 5 free days of Qigong training.
Brilliant. Now, before we move on, I just want to ask, is there anything that, like as in for, generally, like even before they come into your world, is there anything, there's a simple process in Qigong movement that they can do and experience to see, like, hey, this is something that's nice? Like, would there be any movement for them to learn?
Yeah, I would actually just say practicing mindfulness in the body. And one of the things I do on the first day of my 5-day Qigong challenge is actually teach people centering. And what centering is like it's unplugging from all the different distractions in your life. And you might like to think of these like tabs open in your internet, right? When you've got like 25 different tabs open, the computer slows down, like everything starts to break down. And so I really do think the best thing that people can do is actually just sit quietly by themselves for a period of time and actually feel their body. And I like to call this rest the mind on the edge of movement, or on the edge of physiology. And so feel the body moving as you breathe. Feel the tickle of your hair on your neck. Feel the clothes on your body. Feel your feet on the ground. And actually just feel the physical body as you breathe, and unplug from everything else. When your mind wanders and you're like, whoa, what's for lunch? Or, oh my goodness, I've got to get something out of the freezer for dinner. No. Just bring your mind back into feeling your body and rest your mind on the edge of physiology, on the edge of movement. And a lot of people talk about focusing on the breath, which I love, but the breath is one thing, where when you focus on the body, you can let your mind wander around your body and feel different aspects of your body, but just keep your mind on your body. And this reminds me, have we got time for a really short story just to go into this a little bit?
Yes, deeper? Absolutely.
So many years ago, me and a mate were running a Kung Fu class, and we had a group of young men come in, and let's just say that there may have been some learning problems and some mental health stuff going on in this group of young men. And they started to train with us, and of course, a great group of fellas. But there was one guy especially who I thought may be particularly challenged by the fact that we go so slow. Yeah, like this may really actually challenge him, because of course I can see him going fast, I can see him doing Kung Fu and loving it, but when we slow down, that might be a problem for him. And so before we did some of the Zhan Zhuang we just spoke about, going slow, just standing there, I actually went up to him, I put him aside, and I said to him, hey mate, do you realize there is as many cells in your body that there are stars in the known universe?
Wow.
He was like, wow. And I'm like, what I want you to do is I want you to go inside yourself, and I want you to find your internal universe. Can you do that for me? And he was like, yeah, I can do that. And to this day, some 25 odd years later, he still loves his Zhan Zhuang, and we still talk occasionally. And, he was ADHD, and he had some things going on. He's like, it taught me to focus on anything that I want to accomplish in my life. And we know with ADHD people that, they can do the thing they really love, but other things can be quite challenging. But this actually taught him to focus in on anything that he needs to do, because he actually learnt to focus in on himself. And so he still goes through these really deep, profound learnings because, like personal development, spirituality, it's an inside job, right? It's an inside job. And so we've got to go inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what that allowed him to do. And so he's never bored. He's like, how can I get bored? There's so much going on inside me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, and that's unplugging. That's deleting all the internet tabs in your internet browser and bringing yourself back to an embodied state. And so I say to anyone out there, the best thing you can do is go inside and find your internal universe and feel and peel yourself back like an onion. Feel deeper. What's under that feeling? What's under that feeling? What's under that feeling? And go deeper and deeper and deeper. And just sit there with yourself. And the more you can do that, and the longer you can focus on that without your mind wandering outside yourself, the more your focus and your natural ability to come back into a regulated state within yourself, to know what you're thinking, to what you're feeling, to what you want to achieve, to where your energy is being directed, all of those things will improve. And from there, the rest of your life will as well. So definitely go in and find your internal universe.
I just did. As you were explaining it, and it was so meditative, and there was so much to explore internally, and bringing it back to the center and the stillness resonates a lot. It relaxed my nervous system. Even on the podcast now, like I was gone into a meditative state.
And I think with that, Meena, the idea of that stillness and finding that center should then go into our Qigong movement, which is a beautiful analogy for we should be still within the movements of our life.
Yeah.
So no matter what we've got going on, and there's a line that I quote a lot to my students, probably my favorite line from it's a 3,000-year-old Taoist text. And it's that the ancients were busy, but they were never depleted.
Wow.
Because they mastered stillness within movement. And our whole life is a movement, but how do we remain still? How do we become the eye of the storm? The stillness in the center of the chaos. And if we can do that for ourselves, then we can be busy and we can be doing a million things, but we still own our own center. That's what makes us sovereign.
That's amazing. I learned so much, Nick. Thank you so much for this.
My absolute pleasure.
It was amazing. Yeah, because I have a very busy mind, and that is how I got into forest therapy, flower therapy, and all of that, because it was hard for me to focus, and I have ADHD tendencies and anxiety, and all those things are kind of like I have been traveling with that. And that is where just meditating was tricky for me. And I got into nature therapy. And now with what you are saying, thank you.
Amazing. My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Meena.
Beautiful, beautiful. So just before we wind up the whole session, I've got just one more question, because our listeners can be aged people. When I say aged, like, as they're aging, like generally our body movements are slowing down. Sometimes it's restricted because we haven't practiced in our early days, to maintain the tensibility. Now, for someone of that category, how can they start building their chi in their life? So it's not like, oh, I can't do anything about it now because I'm aging now. Or so how can they build Qigong in their life?
So maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, I got contacted by an association here in Australia, the Country Women's Association. And the Country Women's Association down in Broadbeach wanted me to come in and teach them and the ladies there some Qigong. And I'm like, yeah, not a drama. Anyway, I went down there, a beautiful bunch, but like no one in that class was under the age of 80.
Wow.
Right? So we're talking about 80 plus, right?
Yeah.
80 plus in this room. And not only that, they're the most amazing, funniest, most beautiful group of women, but they fed me too much cake because I used to come at the end of their sessions and they were like, we've got cake here. Right? But anyway, the thing that I noticed first and foremost with them when I first started, because like I like a lot of the flowing movements and I wanted to get their bodies moving. Because if we lose that movement, then we lose our coordination, we lose our balance, we lose our strength. And the thing I noticed first and foremost were that these ladies were rigid. Like, think of why a drunk person survives a car accident. Because they're so loose. The energy of the accident moves through their body. So when we age, we get stiffer and stiffer and stiffer. And this is also part of what I was talking about before, where we've got to delete the program from our body with the saber-toothed tiger. We've got to delete that program so we can fall into parasympathetic. Tension, physical tension that builds in the body, is part of that program that hardwires in unless we delete it. Unless we physically program in softness, it continues through our life, which is why these women had got to 80 and they were stiff as boards. And over the course of 12 months, and soft, and their movements were flowing, they were no longer rigid and hard, which means that if they did have a stumble and they fell over, they may not break a hip because maybe they're actually not fragile, like stiff and fragile and brittle anymore. And that's the state they'd got into, which is why they begin to dotter around, because they feel brittle and fragile. And so starting Qigong for people who are maturing, and they may think, oh, you know, I'm past it, I'm over and I'm too old. But there's a saying in Chinese, which is, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. But if you didn't do that, when's the next best time? Now. So even though we're maturing, and that's why there's the different layers. Like, I've got some young people I train, and they scale through those different levels of training quite quickly because they're young, they're agile, they've got great body consciousness. But for those people who maybe haven't done those movements in a while, actually retraining to re-own them, to re-inhabit the environment of our physical body is actually an extremely empowering and healthy way to go. And as you do it, yeah, you begin to move better, you begin to feel better, you feel healthier, you're more confident in your body, you've got more competence and know that your body is going to be there when you need it. And so if people are a bit concerned about that, just jump in, just start learning some Qigong, just start going, just start learning to flow. And day by day, week by week, month by month, your body will begin releasing the tension. You'll become more embodied. You'll become more focused. You'll be more balanced. You'll have more harmony. You'll feel calmer. You'll sleep better. And you'll see those effects rippling out into your life.
Beautiful, beautiful. I wish I knew this for my mom, because she has got a very restricted movement. So, but never late. I will instruct her over the phone. So beautiful.
Send to the podcast, Indu.
Definitely, definitely, definitely.
No, I'm super grateful for all the learnings, and I'm excited for our audience and our listeners who are going to benefit greatly from knowing about Qigong and knowing Nick, and how they can go even further by contacting Nick. So
yeah, it was an amazing power-packed podcast. I believe it was a lot of information, and not just just an information given, but it's a lot of deep learning and understanding through your explanations as well, Nick. And even though I've been in the world, like, the layer what you have just dropped in is pure gold. Like, yeah, okay, now I get it. Like, it's all coming together, So yeah, I mean, there would be definitely a different time where we would meet to talk about in depth about other things. But for now, I think we are in a good space to wind up. But thanks for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you, Indu. Thank you so much, man. Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed having a good chat.
Thank you. There is so much more to learn from you, Nick. So we'll definitely catch up again. Because when you said about fascia and breath and all of that, I have so many more questions, but I think we don't have enough time now.
Episode two.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, right. I gotcha. Amazing.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.